Three, two, one. Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to My Life Without Limits. Good day. It's been quite some time since I've been in this wonderful podcast.
Yeah.
Before I continue, I want to welcome and say good day and good afternoon or good evening, whatever everybody's listening to my co-host, the brain of the podcast, as I always call her, Leah. How are you doing today?
I'm great. I'm so happy to have you back. How can
Yeah,
I be great?
it's been a while. It's great to see your face. I haven't been here for a while, so between you and Emily hold the fort pretty
Yeah,
well.
sure
So
did.
thank you so much for both of you.
Yes, thank you, Emily.
I hope you guys don't miss me too much.
You were missed.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much for that.
Sure.
Yeah, it's very excited. But how are you doing today?
I'm great. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
doing really good. Thanks. How
yeah.
are you? You
I'm
ready
doing
for
good.
this episode back
Yeah,
in things?
yeah, very exciting. We have a wonderful guest that you were able to connect with. I'm
Yeah,
very excited to be back and learn a lot and ask questions because that's what I like to do
that's right.
and get to know our guest and have a little great conversation and have a little fun today.
Yep,
So
that's
that's
right.
okay.
That's exactly what we're going to do. We have an
So
important topic today. And as part of our Barrier Free Alberta series that we're doing, we are joined today by Barrier Free Alberta member from Deaf and Hear Alberta, Alison. Thank you for joining us. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of the podcast. I'm excited to talk about this very important topic. So
Yes, it is very important.
looking
And
forward to
especially
it.
from your perspective that you're going to show, I think this is something we need to be talking about.
absolutely.
So yeah,
For sure.
why don't we just start with you telling us a little bit about yourself and a bit about Deaf and Hear Alberta?
Okay, well, I've been working in not-for-profit for probably 30 plus years. And I have my MBA, so I've got a business background. And I think more importantly about myself is that as long as I can remember, I've been a nurturer and a helper. And so when I started at Deaf and Hear Alberta, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. And so it's a privilege to work alongside an amazing team of professionals and also a group of outstanding community leaders that are really trying to advocate for systemic change.
Yes.
So that's a wonderful part of this role. Yeah. And Deaf and Hear Alberta, well, we've been in business, I guess, if you want to call it that, for over 60 years.
Pretty much.
Over 60 years. Oh,
Over 60
wow.
years, yes. We have, and I often describe Deaf and Hear Alberta as small but mighty, because we're a small team, but we deliver a lot of support to the deaf and hard of hearing individuals throughout Alberta so that they can fully participate in society. We provide ASL interpreting, we provide ASL classes, we do one-on-one consultations for individuals who might need some technology support or solutions, such as assistive listening devices. We provide workplace accommodation plans for those that are trying to get into the workplace and what an employer would need to provide for them so that they can perform their job. And we also do a lot of guidance on websites when people have to apply for things and navigate government websites, because I know if you've ever tried to apply for something online, you know it's not as easy. And when English is not your first language and ASL is, they often do need that support. And we also run seniors programs that are designed to reduce that social isolation that can come from late onset hearing loss. So it comes with age. And we find that is particularly relevant for their social well-being and helping them live a healthy, active life in their senior years. Yes.
Oh, nice.
And
Great mission.
do you guys work on both cities there, Alison, on Calgary and Edmonton, or is it only particularly in Calgary, your services?
Our head office is in Calgary, but we
Uh-huh.
provide ASL interpreting throughout the province. We have
Oh, perfect.
a number of interpreters in Edmonton
Mhm.
and a number of interpreters in Calgary. So those are the main two kind of populations of deaf and hard of hearing people, but we do have people that we serve in Lethbridge. There's folks in Medicine Hat, and there's people throughout rural communities as well.
Oh, perfect. Perfect.
Yeah,
Thank you.
just like us. Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank
Yes.
Thank you for that. For
Yeah,
sure.
you're welcome.
Sure.
Yeah. So how did you get involved with Barrier Free Alberta?
Well, I got involved because I was invited by someone to attend the meetings, and I was originally on the human rights table.
Right.
So I came down onto the barrier free. But why I got involved is because I personally think it's ludicrous that Alberta does not have an accessibility legislation.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm passionate about deaf and deafblind and hard of hearing people receiving those accommodations that they need
Mhm.
to fully understand and participate in society, whether that's work or social or educational. And the struggle that we've had to get service providers to recognize their responsibility under the Alberta Human Rights Act
Yeah.
Mhm.
in the duty to accommodate is a significant challenge. It's very
Mhm.
difficult. And so when there's no immediate consequences for not meeting an accessibility request, unless somebody complains, nothing changes. And unfortunately, a lot of deaf and hard of hearing people won't go through that complaint process.
Right. Yeah.
And I do believe that we need a comprehensive piece of legislation that covers all of it, not just for deaf and hard of hearing, but we're here to focus on them today.
Yeah.
But to make sure that communication equity is the standard. And that's more than just providing ASL interpreters, it's providing and ensuring that individuals actually have what they specifically need to fully understand the conversation. And so that's why I got involved, because I know this is not happening and it's something that needs to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That,
It's
that,
shocking.
that is actually something that I can basically agree with what you're saying, because I'm shocked myself that there's no accessible act yet in Alberta. It's just incredible to me that there isn't. And sometimes, as a person with a disability myself, I feel powerless sometimes when we don't have that part of it, right? We continue to advocate, and then you feel trapped at some points in life, right? But my guess is the most we advocate, hopefully, the better it is, and finally we can open more doors, right? So
Yep.
I couldn't agree more, Carlos. It's you do feel small and you feel insignificant when you're disrespected in a way that people are actually denying you what you need.
Yep.
And it's not like this is, something extra special that you get. It's
Right.
it's just it's a need. It's just is what it is.
It's a need, like everybody else needs something, right? So
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, well,
exactly,
that's for sure. Yeah.
exactly, that's for sure.
And being deaf or hard of hearing, is that considered an invisible disability?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's as the name implies, an invisible disability means it's not readily noticeable, right? It's you can't see. If you show up in a wheelchair, people know that you have a mobility disability. So that's easy to address. But even though it's invisible, if it hinders you from fully participating in society without accommodation, then it's a disability. And I know people that have ADHD. I know people that have dyslexia. Well, they all need accommodation, and nobody knows that until a certain situation arises. And so it's the same with deaf and hard of hearing. Unless you actually have a specific need to have a conversation or direct conversation or communication with them, it's not evident. And while many deaf and hard of hearing individuals can manage short interactions like hello, how are you, they'll understand that you're saying something to them, and it's usually hello, how are you. But when the stakes are higher in situations that are work related or healthcare related or education related, that's when it's vital that the right accommodation is provided for the individual, and that the communication is made equitable. Right?
And it has to be completely vital, because what happens if they're in a healthcare society or a healthcare environment and something happens to them because they don't receive the right information, right? So, or they get hurt even worse, or something like that, or they don't get the proper medication because they don't have the proper, the proper needs, right? So it's very, very vital to push for that. And that's even more shocking than there's no act still in place for the accessible part of it because of that particular need, for sure. I haven't even thought about it until you mentioned it just now, how important it is. And it is huge. It is hugely important. It is just very, very important.
Yeah.
Yes, and I remember a young friend of mine telling me, deaf friend, he went to the hospital to have a test done, and he checked in, and he asked for the VRI so we could understand what was happening. And they couldn't find it. It's apparently it's an iPad, and they bring up an interpreter on the iPad, and they couldn't find it, so he had to go without. And so they gave him the forms to fill out, and then he filled them out, and then they sent him to the wrong department for the wrong test. And now he's a very intelligent young man. He's a university graduate, so he could read and understand what was going on, but it wasn't. He was saying to me, what if that had been a senior, or that had been someone whose English is not as as good as his, and they ended up getting the wrong test or got an injection for a test that they weren't even having. And so the risk is there. It's a very real risk. Absolutely it is.
Wow, very scary.
Yes.
Even for me, when I was at my situation when I was away, I couldn't even understand some medical terms and I can read and I can write, right? So imagine somebody that can't read or hear or stuff like that. I can see how tough it would be if even for me some medical terms I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, can you explain it to me in a proper way?
Yes. And there's another part to that too, because the healthcare system has changed its provision of ASL interpreters for those who use ASL to VRI on demand, which is a virtual interpreter, comes up on screen similar to what we are right now. And they're using US-based interpreters. And so, even from Western Canada to Eastern Canada, there's different common signs.
Certainly,
And it varies. And so you have US interpreters coming in, and seniors find them very difficult to understand because they're using US signs. They don't know how to spell things like Peter Lougheed. And so they're asking for the doctor to spell where they need to send the patient. And it's just inadequate. It's insufficient is what it is in certain situations. Some situations it works perfectly well. But again, that brings me back to my point, is what does that individual need in that environment? Not what you're willing to provide them, but rather what do they need?
They need. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What the
Yeah.
needs are.
Assess each individual. Yeah.
Yes.
For
Yes.
sure.
What are some of the common misconceptions when it comes to the deaf community? There's a lot.
Oh, there are so many misconceptions about deaf and hard of hearing people. I think my
Yeah.
favorite one is if you speak loudly, somehow the deaf and hard of person will miraculously be able to
Yes, a miracle
understand
will
what you're
happen. You're
saying.
the one
They will
person in
suddenly
the
be able to
world.
hear you.
They will suddenly be able to hear.
Yeah, you're that one person that's going to make it happen. Oh no.
That's
Yeah.
right. And I've seen it over and over again with especially at customer service counters in banks and so on. And you know, the fact is, if you shout at someone that has hearing loss, it doesn't help. It
No.
distorts the sound to
Right.
them, and then it if they're doing lip reading at all, they really can't. Your mouth changes shape, and
Yes.
you know, if you've got an accent and it gets louder. So really that would be the most common I've seen. And likely if you could just face the person, make sure you're looking straight at them and speak in your normal tone at your normal speed, they would get most of the communication. That's if they're using lip reading for
Yeah.
sure.
No, Alison, for somebody like me who haven't encountered, to be honest, too many people who are hard of hearing, to be honest. I encountered a few of them, and sometimes it's kind of hard if I'm walking in the street or if I'm meeting somebody at the mall to know if they're hard of hearing. I would know basically because they would start moving their hands or kind of looking at your lips. But what if you how is it a way that I can perceive it better so then I don't do that misconception of on the person, right? Is there a way that I can perceive that better?
Well, that's a great question, actually.
Mhm.
I think that, you know, if they're a deaf person that is verbal or has speech, you'll hear that commonly referred to as a deaf accent,
Yeah.
you
Mhm.
know, because they can't hear their voice. And
Yeah.
so it's amazing how they can learn how to speak as long as they get that language acquisition early on in life.
Oh wow. Okay.
But I think the easiest thing is to just ask them if
As
you think that they're not understanding or that they're not hearing you, then just to ask them if they can hear or if they need some support. And like I said, it's an invisible disability, and until you get into that
Mhm.
direct communication,
exactly.
it's very difficult to
Most of
know.
them will be open then to respond to you and say, yes, I am hard of hearing, I can't.
Yeah.
Uh,
They'll have
Or
their
they'll
way to
indicate that they're
communicate it.
deaf.
okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah. They'll communicate it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got off script for a second. I
No, that's
apologize.
okay. You had a question.
Oh no,
and
that's
that's why we're
perfect.
here.
Yeah, no. You can throw any questions at me. I'm pretty good at answering them. And if I don't know the answer, I'll admit it.
Right, yeah.
Right?
You let us know.
I will.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, what are some other misconceptions that you find?
Yeah, I think the other one that's very common is that deaf and hard of hearing means that there's some sort of cognitive
Right.
deficit.
Yeah.
I personally know teachers, I know a psychiatrist, I know researchers, I know a pharmacist, I know accountants, I know a lawyer, and they're all deaf and hard of hearing.
Yeah.
Last year at our gala, we had a keynote speaker who was actually a medical doctor.
Oh wow.
And she was showing
Yeah.
her stethoscope and how it works and how she can examine patients and embrace her deafness and her abilities.
Right.
It was quite amazing. I think what happens though, when people have a gradual hearing loss, they might ask you to repeat yourself, or they
Mhm.
might come back to the conversation. I mean, the conversation's moved on and they come back to a point because they didn't quite hear it. And so people roll their eyes and think, oh, she's losing it, or, you know, grandma's getting senile, or whatever they want to
Yeah.
dismiss it as, right? And they assign that to intellect instead of a
Right.
sensory issue, which is really what it is. It's a sensory issue, and that one of your senses isn't working quite as well as it could, should, or
Yeah.
otherwise. But it's yeah, it's nothing to do with cognitive ability. That's another good misnomer. And I think one of the other ones too is when someone gets a cochlear implant or they have hearing aids, it restores everything to normal.
Right.
Which it does not.
No.
Unfortunately, it's not like putting on a pair of glasses and think, oh yeah, I can see 20/20 now. It's great. Hearing aids amplify sound and they help you in situations. I'm a bilateral hearing aid wearer.
What does that mean, if you don't mind me asking? Like
Oh, it
bilateral?
means I have a hearing aid on both ears.
On both, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's been life-changing for me. For years, I struggled to talk on the phone or have a conversation on my cell phone, or even a meeting like this. I'm using my hearing aids to as a microphone for you, but as a microphone for me, our speakers right into my hearing aids, so I don't miss anything.
Okay.
Right?
Gotcha. Okay.
That's
it
awesome.
just makes life so much easier for me. And I think hearing aids help, but they don't resolve all hearing issues. And people think that if you've got one of those, then you should be able to hear. But if people stand behind me and speak, I won't necessarily pick up what they're saying because my microphones or my speakers are pointed forward, so I can have conversations. So you still have to look at me and you still have to speak, and it's better if you use a normal tone. If you speak too quiet,
so they don't have to, like I was gonna say, they don't have to speak on secrets behind you because you won't be able to hear.
Oh yeah. If anybody wants to talk about you, you can literally do it behind your back. Yeah.
Yes, but Carlos, I'm a mother, and mothers have eyes in the back of their head.
True.
That's very true.
True.
Yes,
in a sixth sense too. You guys are
right. You got it. Yes.
Yes.
True.
Yeah.
For sure.
And people also don't realize when they have cochlear implants, the rehab that people have to go through, and it depends on how long they've had the hearing loss and when they get the cochlear. And if it's a long time, there's quite a bit of rehab to go through so that the brain can learn to recognize the sounds and the words. I have a friend who has gotten a cochlear, and he has a cochlear compatible hearing aid. And he said to me when he first got it done, it sounds like cats meowing.
Oh,
he goes, people talk and it sounds like he said it's weird. But then he had to do all the rehab where you're listening and watching videos of people speaking and connecting the sound, and you retrain your brain to actually hear. So
that's very interesting. I didn't realize that happens. Like
that would be exhausting.
Oh, absolutely.
Mental stuff like that is exhausting. That would be exhausting for somebody to go through that, because when your brain is working that hard, you're oh wow.
That's tough. For sure.
Yeah.
But it does restore people's hearing to a point where they can function. And they're great tools for people that are deaf or hard of hearing.
I think something else people don't realize is that people who are deaf can enjoy a music concert. And I think we've all seen that in viral videos that do go around. And, that's another thing is that, you would assume it's like that video that came out with that young lady with Down syndrome who's like, I want a margarita. Why wouldn't I want a margarita? Like, because people would assume because she has Down syndrome that she won't drink or anything. And people might assume, well, you're deaf. Why would you go to a music concert? But guess what?
They do, and they hear by vibration. Yes. We actually have a special floor in our community room downstairs that feels the vibration of music when it's loud enough, and so they can feel it, and they can dance and have a social event downstairs. So there you go.
That's so nice. That's awesome.
And that's good to know that they feel the vibrations, because I was always wondering about that too. Like, like I said earlier, I haven't encountered too many people with that deaf in hearing, although we have a volunteer right here. Is it Terry?
Terry has
Terry is actually But I'll never ask him, despite of how close we are
I
of
know,
slowly
right?
working together. I feel like, how do you do it on concerts? You know, like it never occurred to me to ask, but that's actually a good point. It's a
Yeah.
good learning experience for me today, because yeah, I was always wondering how did they do it when they go to concerts and stuff.
We will have to ask him if he's here on Friday. We'll
Yeah,
ask him
we
about his,
should.
because I know he does have a hearing aid. And I
Yeah.
mean, I never asked either, because we just chat all the time like
Yeah.
normal. I never think to go, oh, hey.
We never
You know,
really ask those type of questions of like, hey, you know.
Well, that's another advantage of my hearing aids, because I was able to hear music beautifully right into my ears, and it was like perfect sound
Mhm.
system when I got my hearing aids. And yeah, and I love music. I've always been a musical
Great.
person and play an instrument, and you know, it's been a big part of my life, but I wasn't enjoying it as much for the
Right.
longest time. And then when I got my hearing aids and I could actually hear it, I went, oh,
Yes.
You're
that's
like,
what's been
yes.
missing, right?
Full experience.
Yeah, right.
Now I'm
Yeah.
gonna have fun.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
for sure.
Uh,
yeah.
No, that's awesome. And I know we've talked about a few barriers, but what other kind of barriers do people in the deaf and hear community experience?
Well, you know, there's so many. I think one of the biggest ones is the I guess ignorance is a harsh word maybe to use, but it's really
Mhm.
people not knowing and understanding
Yeah.
what kind of barriers they're putting in place for people by not giving them the communication access that they need
Yeah.
to participate in the conversation.
Mhm.
I know we felt like we hear a lot, and we do hear a lot of stories about limited access or
Mhm.
being denied access. And so we decided that we would hold some focus groups, actually. I think it was just last spring that we held some focus groups and asked where were these barriers and what were they and how were they impacting individuals. And through the course of the conversations, this was both for deaf and hard of hearing. They said the three top areas where they found it the most difficult was employment in the
Mhm.
workplace, healthcare, and education.
Okay. Yep.
And yep, so we wanted to dig a little deeper, and we actually did a survey across the province. So I have some statistics I can share with you if you want.
Great.
Yeah,
Sure.
absolutely. Feel free.
Yeah. So we dug a little deeper with the whole barrier and where they were getting denied and how often this was happening. And
Mhm.
50% of the respondents said that at least once a month they would get denied access,
Mhm.
communication access to an ASL interpreter in particular.
50%. Wow.
Of the respondents, yeah.
Yeah.
Respondents. That's big.
To me, that's a lot.
That's
It is a lot. Yeah.
That's a lot of
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, and it's sad because a lot of these, deaf and hard of hearing people that use ASL are really only asking for interpreters in those types of settings. So when they need to understand something at work, or they're going for a medical appointment, or they're in some sort of classroom or legal system. Like you go to court, you want to know what's going on, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, so 41% indicated that no accommodation was given during the hiring process. So again, I tell you another story about a friend of mine who went for a job interview, and because he was deaf, they expected him to write back and forth the answers to the questions.
Oh,
Now, you put yourself in that situation, how would you
Yeah.
fare?
no, not
No,
good, to be honest.
No.
Not good, because I would be panicked. I have awful writing. They wouldn't be able to read what I wrote, for one, and I would be nervous and anxious, and there's no way that I could get across properly what I wanted to get across.
Right. And we all know that spoken English is completely different to written
absolutely.
language,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Yeah. They also, they're in the survey, we also got 30% that were employed had no accommodation provided during performance reviews.
Wow.
Yeah.
How can you express yourself and, you know, tell people where you're doing well and where you need
Yeah.
support?
Exactly.
And if you can't, if it's written back and forth.
Yeah.
And how can you review somebody if you don't give them the proper help? Like,
Yeah.
how can you?
Exactly.
Or expect them to live up to those
Yeah.
expectations that
Yeah.
you're hoping they do when you do the review, when you set up goals and everything. How do you expect them to live up to that when you're not giving
When
them
you're not giving them the tools
what they
like,
need?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which,
Yeah, so the barriers are there. They're in significant places.
Yes, you're right.
You know, it's not just help me. It's you know, I want to contribute. I'm employed here. I want to do a great job. I need the feedback. I need to be able to communicate. I know other people personally that you know, they've worked for organizations for 10 years and they've never had an ASL interpreter on site for anything.
Wow.
They don't get invited to meetings, they get sent the minutes of the meetings.
Ugh, so just
wow.
excluded. Yeah.
Yeah. And so those are all things that really drastically impact people and
Yeah.
their ability to move up a corporate ladder or to prove their value, and or feel like they really are included. And
Yeah.
I've always said that access first, inclusion second. You can't say just because you've hired someone, they're included.
Right.
Yeah,
They have to
exactly.
have the access.
The access first.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're right.
And
And other,
until, yeah, sorry, go ahead, Carlos.
no, go ahead, Alison, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, until there's some clout behind employers
Right.
having to provide this,
Yeah.
and some consequences when they don't, nothing's going to improve for
Mhm.
people with disabilities, and
Mhm.
certainly not for deaf and hard of hearing people.
Yeah.
But again, I think the biggest challenge is getting the hearing population to understand that simple
Mhm.
fact, right?
Yeah.
It's really not rocket science, and there are many cost-effective solutions out there
Yeah.
already.
Mhm. Right. And that's one thing that a lot of people don't. They always say, oh, money, we can't afford it. We can't afford it. Well, there's ways.
You can afford
You know?
other stuff. You can make sure there's proper money for proper
Yeah.
needs that you need, right? So,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yes. And I couldn't agree more. And, you know, these accommodations are a tax write-off for employers too.
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
not like
That's true.
they do get at least some money back on their investment and I think that's the difference too, is when you look at these accommodations as an investment in your employee to produce for you instead of an expense, it puts the employer in a different mindset, right? This is really an investment in the
And the
productivity
more
and the company.
the more open the employer is to have somebody with a hearing aid or a disability in your organization or company, the more well they're going to be placed on, because I mean that they're going to see that the organization or the company is open to hire persons with disabilities or people with hearing aids, right? And they're going to bring more people into your company. Your company is going to be more well known, and more money will be coming in because of being more well known, right? So
Right.
Yeah.
it's
Put it in your marketing budget.
exactly.
Put it all in there.
Put it in your marketing. Put it
Well,
somewhere.
should be in your HR budget as far as I'm concerned. Like, you know, if somebody has an injury at work and they need
Yeah.
a return to work accommodations to get them back and to be productive, or they need to change in duties, we do that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So why not do it up front?
Exactly. That's
Right.
actually a very good point. I didn't even thought about
Yeah.
that, but it's true.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
true.
it is.
It's true.
Very true.
It's
Yeah.
very, very true.
Yeah. So having consequences for companies and organizations and places, that would be part of strong and effective legislation. Is there anything else that you think would be great to have?
Oh, yeah, this is a great topic of conversation. I think for the community we serve, equitable or communication equity
Yeah.
needs to be the foundation for the access standards. You know, there's a saying, a picture paints 1,000 words.
Mhm.
And we often use a cartoon type picture to explain the difference, or explain what we mean between or define equity in communication. And it's a picture of 3 boys. And on the one side, they're all standing on a single box. And so they've all been given the same access to look over the fence and watch the game.
Mhm.
Now, the tall boy, he stands way over the fence. He's towering over it. The middle guy, he's a little shorter, but he can see over the fence with the one box. But the little guy on the end, he can't see over the fence even with the box.
Mhm.
That's equitable. That's equality. Everyone's given the same thing, right?
Yeah.
On the other side, the tall boy isn't given anything because he can already see over the fence. The guy in the middle is given 1 box, but the little guy on the end, he's given 2 boxes.
Right.
And because he's given what he needs, he can see over the fence and he can enjoy the game with everybody else.
Right.
That's equity.
That's equity. Yeah.
And so when you look at equity in communication for deaf and hard of hearing people, that's what we mean. They're given exactly what the individual needs to be able to fully participate in the conversation and fully understand the conversation.
Mhm.
So that's an essential part of for inclusion. It's we can't not give people what they need to fully function in society. And when they're intellectually and physically capable of doing so much, and there are a lot of people highly educated because their parents have given them that language acquisition and they've got the support through school and, you know, they do very, very well. And they're held back because of what the hearing population think or assume about them and their capabilities in the workplace or in society. You can also apply that communication equity to public buildings. And if you're putting in a sound system, make it Bluetooth, make it T-coil so that people who have different devices can tap into it and get that communication. I know Arts Commons is doing a brilliant job on doing that for the deaf and hard of hearing community. They even have ASL interpreters for some performances.
Yep. Right.
And it's just such a critical thing to be included in the legislation that equity needs to be there for individuals, especially in employment and healthcare and education.
Yes.
That when you were talking about that cartoon picture, I totally know which one you're talking about because we had that on one of our slides for presentations that I do. We talk about equality and equity. A lot of schools do not recognize the difference between equality and equity. They were always taught it's always about equality instead of looking at it the other way around, which is the equity part of things. And I think that what you just mentioned just now is very important for not only for persons with disabilities or people with hard of hearing, but for everyone in particular, right? For everybody in particular. So.
Yeah, I think equity is it's got to be the foundational piece, and we can build up from there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what we're going to do at the Accessibility Now rally with Barrier.
Absolutely.
Alberta,
yes.
That we're so excited for on 1 month from today, actually, when we're recording this, it's going to be, or tomorrow, 1 month from tomorrow. So September 28th in Calgary and Edmonton, 1:30. So McDougall Center.
That's right.
In Calgary, the East Lawn, hopefully.
Yes.
Stay working out well, and then the front steps of the legislature building in Edmonton.
No, that's on a Saturday, so there's no excuses of like I have work going on or
no excuses.
or,
And I want to say to everybody, no, don't just show up yourself. bring all your friends and family.
Yes.
Exactly. Bring friends.
Because they understand too, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's right. No, I think it's going to be great. It's going to shake things up a little bit. And I'm just really happy to see the movement finally kind of getting that push it needs and having that action happening behind it. So that's great.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. I'll
You
be
guys
there
are
with
doing
bells
great work.
on.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah, Carlos and I will be here at Edmonton. We'll do the same
absolutely.
thing.
Absolutely. I'll definitely be
Awesome.
there.
Yeah.
It's something that needs to happen, and I'm very happy to hear that that this movement is happening. So I'm very, very excited. If I could do it every day, I would be out there doing it every day. But
That's right.
Well, I watched a documentary, and I think it was on Netflix, but it was about the accessibility movement in England.
Oh.
And the disabled people actually chained themselves to buses and got in the way of public transit and got in the way of different things and drew attention to the fact that they couldn't get on a bus.
Yeah.
And, you know, all the different things that were barriers for them. And so that's how they got their legislation. So
maybe we have to start doing that.
We do. We'll see how the rally goes, and if nothing changes, we will
start chaining ourselves. No, I'm just kidding.
We'll come up with something.
Right. Yeah. But we have to do something, and I'm actually hoping this all gets in place before I retire.
Right. Yeah.
That would be lovely.
Let's cross our fingers, right? And keep it pushing, so then it can definitely happen before every one of us retire.
Absolutely, Carlos. Absolutely.
Right.
Yes. Oh, well, thank you so much for giving us some insight into the Deaf and Hear Alberta community and a little bit more about invisible disabilities like that.
I know. We have our time caught off very, very shortly, but I do have one particular tiny question that I encountered probably a few months ago. I think 5 months ago. I was doing a presentation, believe it or not, and we were talking about putting people first, the people first movement, which it was calling somebody, for example, Maria, who is deaf. And so this person actually came up to me and say, you know, people that are deaf and hearing, they like to be called the deaf persons or the deaf people. And I was like, really? I was like, okay. So I started to hear a lot of different people saying it. So I was wondering, what do you think about that? If you think it's best to put the people first, like for example, say Mario, who is hard hearing, or saying Mario, the deaf individual, or like that. If you understand my question.
I do, and I can see where it's coming from, because the deaf community has a very strong deaf culture. They really truly are a community. Okay. They have their own language, they have their own values, they have their own culture, like the way they interact with one another, things that we as hearing people would look at and say, that's rude. They don't, they just go straight, this is how they go about. And it really is a language-based culture, and they identify as deaf with a capital D. And there's deaf people out there that don't identify as a part of the deaf community, but are deaf. They might wear a cochlear and be oral. They don't use ASL, so they don't feel like they're a part of the deaf community. And so there is a distinction there, and there's not really a hard of hearing community in the same way that there is this beautiful, rich culture within the deaf community.
Oh, there you go.
Because the hard of hearing is from all walks of life and from all different places, and there's not that commonality and that bond that the language, the ASL language, gives to the community, and they have a very distinct culture, how they communicate, how they describe each other, and how their language creates that for them.
Oh, wow. Thank you for letting me know, because I sometimes I linked it between both of them, and it's true. It's different. It's a different community. You know, the hard of hearing and the deaf community, they're different, right? From what you're saying, right? So,
Yes, very different.
oh,
Yes.
that's very. Thank you for clarifying that for me, because sometimes
Yeah.
I tend to combine them together. And
Yes.
sorry for those of you who are listening that I shouldn't combine them. Now I learned that it's separate, and I need to
We're
keep
all
it
learning
separate.
here.
And you know, there's people that might argue differently on the answer to that question, but the deaf culture and the deaf community it's a beautiful community to belong to. I've never
Yeah,
it's a natural community, and they really do care and look after one another.
yeah.
There's that natural connection, and I think when most kids that are deaf are born into hearing families,
Mm-hmm.
you know, when hearing parents don't know that there's this beautiful culture and language out there that will help to accelerate them at school, the earlier they can learn language, the better,
Mm-hmm.
and get geared towards or sent towards the cochlear implant to fix the hearing. And this is one thing that the deaf community don't like, is that whole concept of fixing the hearing or the
Yeah.
loss of hearing, because they are complete in who they
Yeah.
are
In who
and
they are.
identify as deaf.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very interesting to be a bystander and onlooker, and I'm in awe at the connectedness in the community and their culture. It's
Well,
beautiful.
thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you
That's
so much, Alison,
beautiful.
for clarifying that for
Mhm.
me today. So,
You're very welcome.
thank you.
Yeah, I like that. So real quick here before we finish up, life without limits, Alison, what
Yes.
does life without limits mean to you? And do you feel that you live your life without limits?
98% of the time I do.
That's
You
pretty
know,
good.
yeah, it's life without limits it's not only a physical state of being, but it's
Yeah.
also a mental state of being. It's you put
Mhm.
limits on yourself and you put limits on other people because of their ability or their disability.
Right.
I think that everyone has the right to live their best life.
Yeah.
And you know, that intersectionality of all the different personas that we have. I mean, being a CEO, being a hearing aid wearer, being old. You know, they all show up in different times in different places in your life. And I don't want anybody to live a life that's limited,
Right.
especially by others.
But yes, yes.
I'd rather spend my time doing whatever I can to lift someone up than taking a second to put someone down.
Yeah.
That's just not who I am.
Aw.
That's a
Does
great
that answer your
answer.
question?
That
It
definitely
does.
answered the
There's no
question.
right answer.
No,
It's different for everybody, but I love that though.
that's a great
Mhm.
answer. I like
Thank
the
you.
last part of your answer, where I'd rather spend time lifting a person up than
Yeah.
putting a person down. It's
Oh,
actually a great way of
Mm-hmm.
putting at it. So,
Yeah.
great.
there's enough people out there trying to level themselves up because they feel bad about themselves or
Yes.
whatever. But
Yeah,
yeah.
that's true. That's very true. No, it's beautiful. And the different
Yeah.
personas. Yes,
Mhm.
absolutely. I totally believe we all have different personas with whatever we're,
Yeah.
going through. I just Googled today, does menopause make your hair greasier? It's like my hair feels so not right lately, and I am kind of starting to go through a little bit of
Yeah.
that stuff. And I Googled it. There is so much information out there about how it actually can make your hair super duper dry, or you can
Mhm.
get a bit greasier and more limp hair. And I was like, hey, I feel better because I've been feeling terrible about my hair lately. And it's like, that's okay. That persona is going to deal with that.
Mhm.
This persona is going to go do a podcast.
Good for you.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
that's part
it's
of
funny.
life. That's part of life, right?
It
You just
is.
have to
Yeah.
enjoy your hair and see what happens. It's like me. I feel like today I have a lot of hair. Maybe in 60 days, 40 years I won't have any.
Who knows?
You have great
And
hair,
it
Carlos.
doesn't matter.
Right?
And it
So
doesn't matter.
Yeah.
thank you, Alison. You have great
Yes,
hair
thank
too.
you so much for everything. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Any other question, Leah, before we wrap
I don't
things up?
think so.
No?
I've learned lots, and I'm excited
Yeah.
for people to hear this and excited to be part of this movement in any little way that I can be. And yeah, we're going to do some great things.
Yeah,
We are.
for sure. We are. And
Mhm.
don't forget, September 28th, right? Is that correct?
Yep.
September 28th, 1:30.
Yep.
Raleigh here in Edmonton and Raleigh in Calgary. Make sure you
Mhm.
show up. What's the place in Calgary? What's that?
McDougall.
Center.
McDougall Center.
McDougall
That's
Center
where
in Calgary.
that's where the place in Calgary will be. Make sure you bring lots of people. Make sure you share loud and clear. Express yourself loud and clear. Don't worry
Yeah.
about other people. Just do it. Just make sure you do it in a proper manner.
Yeah.
No, we don't want any, you know, we don't want
Yes.
any riots out there or anything like
Yeah.
that, right? You know, in a proper manner.
Maybe we do. I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
Let's hope not.
We'll see
Let's,
how it goes.
let's see how it goes. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Alison. Thank you, Leah, for spending this wonderful couple of minutes with us. And
Oh, glad to have you back. I'm glad you're back.
well, I'm glad to see your face, Leah. I'm glad to get to meet you, Alison, and all the great stuff you've been doing. And please feel free to follow Alison as well. Connect with Alison if you guys have any questions that you need to hear from the heart, from the hearing as well. And make sure to connect with Leah as well, and all of our platforms. Follow our social media, YouTube. Watch your videos on YouTube as well. And yeah, I want to remind you to please live your life without limits and enjoy the rest of your days wherever you are. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank
you so much.
you.
Yeah. Bye for now.